before our eyes and laying aside all private interests, prejudice, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the Queen, the public weal, peace, and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
This honorable House now resumes its sitting. Call of roll.
Mr. Curry.
Present.
Ms. Duncan. Mr. Mowat. Mr. Leith. Mr. White. Mr. Corney. Mr. Richards. Ms. Watt. Ms. Underhill. Ms. Mackenzie. Mr. McIntyre. Mr. Martin. Ms. Abbott. Mr. Blake Brown. Mr. Danvers. Mr. Ferron. Ms. Morris. Mr. Knight Tomlinson. Ms. Small. Mr. Graham. Ms. Blake. Ms. Moisha Clark. Mr. Jersiki. Mr. Baker. Mr. Zudan Brown. Mr. Bryan. Ms. Bengushe. Mr. Kamoy Brown. Ms. Campbell. Mr. Renil Clark. Mr. Davis. Mr. Dixon. Ms. Ellison. Ms. Gale. Ms. Celine Gordon. Mr. Javon Gordon. Mr. Henry. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Keys. Ms. Lawrence. Mr. Logan. Mr. Malcolm. Mr. McIntosh. Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Jerome Palmer. Mr. Jerome Palmer. Mr. Stephen Palmer. Mr. Pierce. Mr. Peart. Ms. Rogers. Ms. Roper. Ms. Rowe. Ms. Salmon. Ms. Saunders. Mr. Sinclair. Ms. Stewart. Ms. Thomas. Ms. Todd. Miss Tyson. Miss South. Miss Watson. Mr. Wellington. Miss Rashida Williams. Miss Shashik Williams. Mr. Golson Woolery.
House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move for the suspension of the sitting to enable us to hear remarks, greetings from parliamentary and other representatives.
The question is that the sitting be suspended to enable us to hear remarks and greetings from parliamentary and other representatives. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? Ayes have it. Help me welcome to bring greetings Mrs. Heather E. Cook, Clerk to the Houses.
Senator, the Honourable Thomas Tavares Finson, President of the Senate, the Honourable Pernille Charles, Speaker of the House, Speaker of the Houses of Parliament and Parliament, staff of the Houses of Parliament and the Ministry of Youth, Education and Information, representatives from National Integrity Action Limited, members of the National Youth Parliament, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. I am pleased to welcome you today as the 2019 sitting of the National Youth Parliament convenes. I am proud that the Houses of Parliament is associated with this noble endeavour which give the youth an opportunity to share their views on the issues that matter to them. Today, our youth will discuss issues that affect not only their generation, but the society at large, and I know we all look forward to hearing their opinions on these issues. To the core, I understand too that you have been working in your communities over the past year, and we look forward to learning what you have accomplished during that period. It is important that you have recognized that as leaders, you will have to be actively involved in the process of transformation. I laud you for offering yourselves to be members of the National Youth Parliament and wish for you a successful day. Thank you.
Help me welcome to bring greetings Senator the Honourable Thomas Tavares Finson, President of the Senate.
Honorable Pernille Charles, Speaker of the House of Representatives, fellow parliamentarians, specifically Minister Terry Long. You can't clap him, you know. Now, Mr. Terry Long is the Minister of State in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. And the other parliamentarian here is Mr. Dwayne Vaz. Can clap him too. Who is the Member of Parliament for, I believe it's Central Westmoreland. Central Westmoreland. I'm going to ask the two of them to stand for a specific reason. Both of them age don't make quarter of Pernille own. Right? So, you can sit. So, I say that within a context because you are here gathered together today as a youth parliament. But I want you to reflect on some things that I'm going to say later. Because plenty of the problems that the youth have across the globe don't apply to us and to you in Jamaica. I'm going to say that within a particular context and come back to you. A lot of countries, the youth struggle to be heard, struggle for representation. In Jamaica, in the parliament, you have many young people, including the Prime Minister of this country. but I'm going to come back and give you a task when I'm finished. Mrs. Heather Cook, Clerk of the House, you heard her earlier, bring greetings to you. She's a critical, the staff of the Parliament is critical to this democracy, and we recognize her and appreciate her. The staff of the House of Parliament and the Ministry of Youth, Education and Information. Members of the Youth Parliament, that is you, so you can clap yourself too. The Political Ombudsman, and that is sitting at the end here, and she's going to talk to you. And she is the person who is tasked with keeping us on our best behavior, but it don't always work. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. I bring greetings this morning from the Honorable Senate, and you will recognize that you are sitting in what is referred to as the lower house. The Senate is the second tier of this Parliament, which is a review chamber. So it would be nice, Minister Terry Long, if one of these years you could perhaps have a bigger input from the Senate, and I'm sure that there are many Lambert Browns sitting here. Just waiting to give me a lot of problem. This year's theme, Jamaican Youth, Leading, Inspiring, and Transforming Our World, draws attention to the potential that our youth have within them. You are being called as leaders to conceptualize the solutions of some of the issues faced in our modern society and to create a clear vision of the way forward. You are being called to inspire all members, the engaged and the indifferent, to move towards the goals that you have identified. Use your influence for good. Use your influence to inspire others to be better, and consequently, to help make our world a better place. By taking these steps, leading and inspiring, you will transform our world. But true transformation takes place when there is a clear vision of where we need to go and the fundamental changes that are required to make this happen. Today, you young people have the opportunity to make your voice heard by the Jamaican people, and in today's world, by the entire world. Now, I said earlier that I was going to, that is what they give me to say. So I had to say this, right? So, thank you very much, Tashana. What I want to say to you is this. Some years ago, an 11-year-old girl in Pakistan by the name of Malala, you have heard of her? Mm-hmm. Eh? And this is a young woman. She was in a circumstance in Pakistan where elements in the society did not believe that females should be educated. And she was shot at age 15. And she went on to, rather than deciding to stay home, she went on to become an advocate for girls' education worldwide, and was actually given a Nobel Peace Prize. Then there's another young lady by the name of Greta Sundberg. She, at age 8, determined that she would become interested in climate change, which climate change, as you know, poses an existential threat to mankind. She suffers from some Asperger's syndrome, and has some learning disabilities. So both these young women, one from tribal lands of Pakistan and one from Sweden, none of these girls have the start that you young people have in life. You recognize that? None of them. All of you have a better educational basis and a better opportunity than either of these young women. And yet still, they have made a remarkable impact, not only in their countries, but on the world stage. Both of them have addressed the United Nations. So I ask you to reflect today on what it is exactly you want to do with your life as young people, how you want to transform Jamaica. And I'm going to ask you specifically, because of my interest, to look at the question of climate change and how we can help to save the world by saving Jamaica. Yes. These people have made a remarkable impact, and I'm going to ask all the male students, the male members of the Youth Parliament who are present, before you leave here today, just jot down a few, Google it. Use your phone for something else other than Instagram and sexting. Just write down. I want you to write down 5 lines on what these 2 young women have accomplished and hand it to the clerk. Just put your name on it and write it. Let me see if I can get an understanding as to where your brain is. Look here. No matter what they say, no matter what people say or what you think, the world is your oyster. You can do anything. Change Jamaica and change the world. That is my charge to you.
Help me welcome to bring greetings, Honorable Donna Parchment Brown, Political Ombudsman.
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm good morning to you all. It is my privilege as Jamaica's Political Ombudsman to congratulate our 100 young parliamentarians on this 10th sitting of the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica, and to thank you for participating. The Office of the Political Ombudsman, established by Jamaica's Parliament, has been recognized by the Organization of American States as a best practice in governments and countries around the world. I applaud today the Jamaican Parliament and the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, as well as other partners on this initiative that provides a platform for you, our younger citizens, to involve yourselves in matters of national interest and to become involved and to experience the parliamentary aspect of our democracy. The NYPJ since 2003 has enabled youth parliamentarians to become more engaged and more aware beyond the great training and the sitting of the Parliament. It has contributed to increased capacities for research, to analyze policies, and to manage projects. Congratulations on the many projects you have done across Jamaica in the various constituencies. I take this opportunity to honor you for signing to comply with and to model the Agreement and Declaration on Political Conduct, the Code, which you did at your training session in October. It is my hope that at the end of this program, that you have been involved in since 2018, You, our youth parliamentarians, are inspired to continue in national service through your clubs, organizations, and other methods that may come to your attention. Perhaps you may consider being youth ambassadors for the office of the Political Ombudsman, especially in 2020, a likely year of campaigning. I extend gratitude to the staff of the Houses of Parliament for investing their time and energy in the success of today's sitting. Mr. Speaker, I look forward to a robust and respectful evidence-based debate. I hope to see and hear good humor and innovative ideas to benefit Jamaicans. After all, you are youth parliamentarians. You are indeed our inspiration. Thank you. God bless you all.
Help me welcome to bring greetings Mr. Dwayne Vaz, MP, Opposition Spokesperson, Youth and Entertainment.
President of the Senate, please step outside, the Honorable Thomas Tavares Vincent. Let's recognize my Speaker, the Honorable Pernell Charles, all other invited guests, and of course the youth parliamentarians. Good morning to you all. First, I must say it's a privilege to speak at the Youth Parliament, and I'm sure no one would deny that if I was sitting either over there or over here, you could not recognize that I'm not a part of the Youth Parliament today. And I say that in the context because I still consider myself as a very young person. And it's very encouraging to see the commitment that each and every one of you have put out throughout the time you have been participating and to be here today. I'll be very brief in my remarks because being here today is really to listen to the recommendations that will be given by you persons as youth parliamentarians. Every day we get up, we hear that the youth are the future. But we have to ask ourselves what is the future we're actually preparing for our young people. There are many obstacles and challenges that we face every day as young persons in Jamaica. We know of the insufficiencies of the education system. We know of the lack of employment opportunities. We know that the entertainment sector is biased towards some. We know that we don't feel secure sometimes in our own country. So there are many things that we have to look at and try to figure out different policies and recommendations for persons like myself in the Parliament of today. Because we know that Jamaica is dependent on the young minds. And as was stated before, all of you in here today have the opportunity. You are well educated. It means you have put yourself in a position to make recommendations to us here in this Parliament so we can work together to make Jamaica a better place. I really look forward to seeing some of you elevate into the status of being actual parliamentarians. Now, I'm not inviting anybody to come and run against me in my seat, but we really look forward to encouraging us to continue participating in this process and really look forward to great debates today. I have no doubt that we'll all enjoy the sitting. As was stated by the Political Ombudsman, she is looking forward to you guys assisting her also to ensure she keeps us on the wraps when it comes on to time of campaigning. But I'm really happy to be here, and I really thank you all for giving this level of commitment to Jamaica. And I'm sure that the recommendations given will be taken strongly into consideration because we all need to work together to make Jamaica that great place we know it can be. Thank you again for having me.
Help me welcome to bring greetings Honorable Orlando Terrelong, MP, Minister of State, Ministry of Education, Youth and Information.
Mr. Speaker, permit me to greet the Honorable Speaker of the House, the Honorable Pernell Charles, Madam Parchment, our Political Ombudsman, my fellow colleague, MP Vaz, Madam Jamie Chavans from NIA, and all other persons here, including the Permanent Secretary from the Ministry of Education, our advisors, Messrs. Chamberlain and Scott, as well as Lady Blair our Senior Policy Director as it relates to Youth and Children Affairs, and certainly Madam Cook of the Houses of Parliament. But most importantly, Mr. Speaker, allow me to greet our very lit Jamaican youth who now sit in this honorable house representing the voice of all Jamaican youth. Mr. Speaker, I stand here this morning with great pride and honor. It is my privilege as State Minister with direct portfolio responsibility for youth to oversee this Youth Parliament and have the privilege of being amongst some of the best and brightest, well-lit minds that Jamaica has to offer. Mr. Speaker, the youth of Jamaica are indeed that guiding force to truly transform our nation. Every single one of you is a leader. Every single one of you has inspired or has the potential to inspire change in others, in your communities, in your country, and in the world. Every single one of you is a transformative force to be reckoned with. And so, Mr. Speaker, when the government of Jamaica speaks of the Partnership for Prosperity, that partnership includes every single one of you, the youth of Jamaica. There can be no growth or development without youth participation. There can be no prosperity in Jamaica unless the youth take their rightful place. For Mr. Speaker, the youth are not just leaders of tomorrow. They are the leading, inspiring, and transformative force today, Mr. Speaker. It is in you that the hope and future of Jamaica lies. We hold Jamaica but as mere trustees as a government for you. Jamaica belongs to every single one of you, and as such, I am honored to be here in your presence. And as we celebrate Youth Month, we celebrate every single Jamaican youth. I have reviewed the topics, and I thank you for having considered these topics pivotal to youth development and to the development of Jamaica. When one considers climate change, one need not concern oneself about, is it a myth? Climate change is a reality. We see climate change every single day. Those of you who went to Hellshire some 10 years ago, some 5 years ago, if you go there today, you see evidence of sea levels rising. You see evidence of the poverty and increased hunger and loss of job prospects that are directly attributed to climate change. And so, as a government, when we determined to ban single-use plastic, we did so in your interest, that our oceans and rivers and byways and waterways can be protected for you, the future of Jamaica. When the Honorable Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, indicated that we would be embarking on a national program to plant 3 million trees, we did so for you, the youth of Jamaica, to reduce, to limit the harmful effects of climate change, that you and your children and their children can inhabit a Jamaica that is worthy of the light that you bring. And so I look forward to hearing you champion the cause of climate change. I look forward to hearing you lead the discussion about more measures to be taken to ensure that Jamaica remains habitable, that the rest of the world listens to our parliamentarians here in Jamaica as it regards taking more serious measures to combat the harmful effects of climate change. As it relates to youth participation, every single one of you here is testament to the benefits of participating in political life. I had the opportunity of speaking to one former youth parliamentarian last evening, and he indicated to me that having participated in the parliament last year, he went on to receive invitations to participate on the world stage as a Jamaican youth by virtue of his presentation here in this honorable house. I take you further to the Far East. In 2010, a young man by the name of Bouazizi, Ali Bouazizi, he was the victim of police brutality, lived in a country where there was a dictator for more than 2 decades, a vendor, a student, a provider for his family at 26 years old. And when they took his cart that he used to peddle fruits, and when he got no redress from the government, he lit himself. That sparked the Arab Spring. Many of you might have been too young. Some of you might recall hearing of it. The Arab Spring toppled the dictatorship that existed in Tunisia by 2011. That light that he lit spread across the Middle East, impacting governments from Egypt and other countries, changing the face of the Middle East. One man, one youth who took upon himself to take a stand against social injustice, who took upon himself to let his voice be heard. That is the power of youth. Youth can change lives. Youth can change regimes. Youth can change governments. And so your participation, by using this finger right here, is a way of ensuring that your voices are heard. It is a way of ensuring that you get the governments that you deserve. So what are the issues affecting youth, and how do you want to see those issues play out in the country? Because those issues will affect your growth and development. And so I'm happy that we have so many youth organizations represented here, because youth participation is key to your ultimate growth development, because the policies that the government implement today will affect you tomorrow and your children the day after that. So never shy away from youth participation. Never ever buy into the narrative that, boy, all politics are bad and everybody are the same. That is not correct. Participate. Abortion. Abortion is a controversial issue. And again, I'm happy that you have decided to debate the issues, because there are young girls who suffer daily by botched abortions. There are young girls who risk their lives daily by taking measures. There are other views, questions of morality, questions of Christianity, questions of when does life actually start, questions of the psychological impact on abortion, those who don't have it, those who have it, questions of rape and incest, and how should that factor in the debate. It is an issue that affects youth. And so I'm happy that Dr. White and others will be bringing that to the fore. Your fourth issue, youth and violence. Again, an important issue, because there are young persons who have taken part in criminal activities. There are young persons who have fallen by the way. But it is a policy of this government that says every single youth is redeemable. And so one of our policy goals includes social reintegration and inclusion. Because I do not buy into the narrative that there are youth who cannot be redeemed and who cannot be reintegrated in society. They simply must be engaged. If we do not engage the youth of Jamaica, then there are those who will fall by the wayside. And as a government, we have made it our duty to engage, to include, and to educate and empower every single one of you. And so when we made the decision as a government that for a youth to have their rightful place in society, they must be educated. And a child that is hungry cannot receive the benefit of a good education. We thinking of you and your children in mind, and recognizing that all Jamaicans have the means to provide lunch for their children. We took the decision 3 years ago to increase the lunch program to PATH students, not from 3 days a week to 5 days a week, because children who are hungry cannot learn. That is the government that represents you. We also took the view to increase the funding to parents of students of PATH. And even more importantly, we took the decision to pay for some 4 CXCs for every Jamaican and 6 CXCs for students who are on PATH, that our country might be educated. As a government, we have also consistently increased the education budget. That budget was cut by some $3 billion in about 2015. And we took the decision to increase it. And so that budget went from $83 billion to now over $100 billion, so that the youth of Jamaica can receive an education. Does it make a difference if you participate? It does. It does. Because it is your participation that determines the government of the day, that determines the policies that are effected, that will benefit you. And so I want to thank you. I want to thank every single one of you for having agreed to join this noble house. And I too look forward to the day when I can call you colleague members of parliament and colleague ministers, because that is your destiny. Your destiny is to transform not just Jamaica, but to transform the world. But you cannot transform the world from the comforts of your seats at home. You cannot transform Jamaica from just discussion with your friends. You must participate. And so I want to wish you all the very best today as you argue the points that I have mentioned. I want to thank you on behalf of a grateful Jamaica, because you continue to serve your country, you continue to do so with dignity and pride, so that Jamaica, under God, increase in I thank you.
Help me welcome to bring greetings, Ms. Jamie Ann Shevans, Youth Outreach Officer, National Integrity Action.
Honorable Pernell Charles, Speaker of the House, Senator the Honorable Thomas Tavares Finson, President of the Senate, Honorable Orlando Terlong, Minister of State in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, Mr. Dwayne Vaz, Opposition Spokesperson, Youth and Entertainment, Mrs. Heather Cook, Clerk to the Houses, Honorable Donna Parchment Brown, Political Ombudsman, Mrs. Hyacinth Blair, Senior Director, Children's Affairs Policy Division, Mr. Kai Bridgewater, Chairman of the Youth Advisory Council, youth parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am pleased to bring warm greetings from the board and staff of National Integrity Action on the occasion of the sitting of the 2019 cohort of the National Youth Parliament. NIA's decision for the second year to partner with the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information for the execution of this program arose as we saw where it provided an opportunity for youth to deepen their understanding of parliamentary democracy while developing their skills in research, policy formation and analysis, advocacy, public speaking, and communication. This, of course, is in line with NIA's mandate as we seek to empower our youth to stand up and speak out for good governance and other pertinent issues that may impact them negatively, directly or indirectly. We were further impressed in 2017 when the program was expanded to require that the young person selected actually executed individual projects in their assigned constituencies as well as county projects as a team. This approach not only promotes one of our core values, that of accountability, but also provides much needed insight into the level of hard work and dedication from our leaders, that is needed from our leaders to make a positive impact in the lives of the people that parliamentarians serve. As such, today marks a milestone where those of you who are seated and are able to make presentation in the chambers of this honorable house, where our nation's leaders converge to treat with the business of the people, have truly earned that right. With that said, I would like to congratulate each and every single member here today for persevering and staying the course till its completion. This year, National Integrity Action committed its support for the execution of county projects aimed at youth violence prevention. We were pleased that all 3 counties took up the charge, conceptualizing and executing projects such as Cheer for Peace in 4 primary schools in Middlesex, youth violence reduction through mediation, which saw students from a number of secondary schools trained in mediation in Surrey, and Emancipate the Youths at Naclava High School in Cornwall. I commend you for persevering despite some challenges, ensuring that you carry a message of positivity as well as provide our youths and children alternative and more constructive means of addressing their grievances with each other and expressing their emotions. This signals that Jamaica's youth, if provided with the necessary support and tools, will endeavor to better their communities and in turn the nation through innovative engagements. Whilst we celebrate the work of the youth parliamentarians, we must also acknowledge those who have worked assiduously in the background, providing much support and guidance, working tirelessly to ensure that your activities were a success. Minister Terlong, the staff from the Youth, Adolescents and Policy Division, the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica, and Senior Advisor Howard Chamberlain. That being said, today is your day. Today you have been given a platform to demonstrate to our current leaders that the youth have ideas worthy of debate, that you have the capacity to make meaningful contributions in areas of governance that will affect them today and for decades to come. Arguably, more importantly, you have been given a platform to demonstrate to your peers that there are legitimate spaces through which youth can be heard, for them to awaken from their slumber and seeming apathy towards the nation's governance, for them to be lit, leading, inspiring, and transforming the world. Thank you.
Help me welcome to bring greetings, Honorable Pernell Charles, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Mr. Speaker, other distinguished parliamentarians and officials of both the Parliament and other agencies. First, I have been instructed by the Minister of Education, Carl Samuda, to ask you to accept that because of cabinet commitment in which he is called to make a presentation this morning, he has asked me to take his time plus my time to welcome you and to express how much he's sorry he can't be here, but very happy that you're here. When I look around on both sides and in the audience, I will warn those who believe that Jamaica is having a problem. Come here and see the solution. I must tell you the truth. I surprised myself too. But I tell you why I am happy. You will not see any more like me here for quite some time. Mr. Speaker, I am in my 52nd year in representation for those who think I can't count. I spent 2 terms in the KCC, 2 terms in the Senate, and I'm in my 7th term in the House of Representatives. Mr. Speaker, I will not see this myself anymore because I don't plan that I should be here next year. It may not. But let me say this to you. Don't let me down. This is hope, not only for Jamaica, but for many parts of the world. Young people. There's a transformation that I am thankful to God that has taken place. We have the first Prime Minister who was born since independence. And you must continue that transformation. You must continue that transformation. But you must be committed to something. You must be committed to something. You must be committed to a country which involves your people, not only in Jamaica. The world is very small. When I was at your age, it might have taken 2 months to send a letter to Australia. Now it takes 10 seconds if you don't understand how to use the technology. The things have happened. Things have changed. I want to repeat, this transformation that you have brought on or has come on while you are here, don't fail it. This commitment that is required to make Jamaica great, don't fail us. This change that must take place, in fact, let me tell you, if you don't want to participate, it will take place. But it may not take place the way you want it or we want it. If you are looking from outside at this gathering, you would feel as pleased as I am. Young, dynamic, young, good-looking men and women. I have sat on both sides of the house, opposition and government. I was Minister of Local Government, Minister of Public Utilities and Transport, Minister of Labor and Social Security, and they have robbed me of the house and made me Speaker of the House. I can't get a chance to speak. I have to tell them, you don't speak. But I'm pleased to see you. I want to make sure you recognize who you are. Not just a good-looking young man from the west or the east, or a young lady who dressed to come to Parliament. You resemble a symbol. Don't forget that. Don't let your country down. I take a minute out of Mr. Samuda one. Crime and corruption will destroy this country. Crime and corruption destroys any country. I'm going to attack you before I leave. Any one of you comes from any district in any part of Jamaica and tell me you don't hear who is the bad man in that district, you're telling a lie. But like me, you're blind, you're deaf, and you're dumb because you're afraid. Unless we, you, all of us, put our commitment on the line for our country and speak up, wipe out the deafness and the blindness and talk, you may die, but many have died for you to be here. And many of you will have to die for others to come. I hope I don't get you to be fearful. Because if you are committed to this country, then you should live here with more power. I heard somebody say, that's not your symbol. The truth is, you have to become powerful in your country to lead. You are leaders. Mr. Speaker, you look like a speaker. You are not to put a politician around a mic and tell him to take 10 minutes. So I'm not going to stay here long. But I want to be assured. I'm very happy, very pleased to be here at this staging and the organizations that are participating. Very pleased that you are able to get them with you. To you, I say this. In your quest to lead, to inspire, and to transform the world and your country, embark on a journey, self-discovery, and self-transformation. You cannot just be one of them. It won't work. You cannot compromise and then you have to say, I know better. You cannot hide because the truth bothers you. You cannot be deaf because you don't want to hear the truth. You cannot be dumb because you don't want to tell the truth. And you cannot be blind because you don't want to see the facts. You're going to lead the country and take it from where we have left it, some bad, some good. And your job is to take this transformation, take your youthfulness and your commitment to Jamaica and the world and make a better country. May God bless you and guide you in this job. May God guide you, all of you. If I were told to choose the next minister, I would be confused. The next prime minister, I would also be confused. Women are called prime minister too, so don't think I'm not talking about it. But it is right here. It was here last year, it's here this year, and so I have hope that from the gallery to down here, I can leave my country, my parliament, knowing it will be in good hands. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to all of you. God bless you.
Help me welcome to bring greetings Mrs. Hyacinth Blair, Senior Director, Children's Affairs Policy Division, Ministry of Education, Youth and Information.
Honorable Pernell Charles, Speaker of the House of Representatives. Senator the Honorable Thomas Tavares Finson, President of the Senate. Honorable Alanda Terrelong, Minister of State, Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. Mr. Dwayne Vaz, Opposition Spokesperson on Youth and Entertainment. Mrs. Heather Cook, Clerk to the Houses. Honorable Donna Parchment Brown, Political Ombudsman. Mr. Kai Bridgewater, Youth Advisory Council. Ms. Jamie Ann Shavans, Youth Outreach Officer, National Integrity Action. Ladies and gentlemen, students, guests, good morning. It is my honor to bring greetings to you all at this 10th sitting of the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica on behalf of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, Youth and Adolescents Policy Division. The sitting of the National Youth Parliament is one of the featured events for Youth Month as it celebrates the achievement of the program's participants after a year of training, workshops, projects, meetings, and outreach. The National Youth Parliament sits today to show Jamaica the fruit of their hard work and present to the leadership of our nation the youth perspective and, even more importantly, the solution to pressing development issues. This year's theme, Jamaican Youth Are Lit, Leading, Inspiring, and Transforming Our World, could not be more appropriate as we see it in action right here within the Youth Parliament. Here in this cohort, we have teachers, athletes, doctors, lawyers, youth MPs, mothers, fathers, honor students, software developers, entrepreneurs, bankers, and more, all of whom are youth leaders who inspire and transform the lives and spaces they interact with for the better. It has always been the goal of the ministry to fully engage Jamaica's youth in every aspect of our work, and it is my sincere hope that the solutions put forward today by the National Youth Parliament will be the starting point for greater conversations and actions within the relevant ministries. The Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, through the Youth and Adolescents Policy Division, reaffirms its commitment to ensuring that with our partners, the Houses of Parliament, National Integrity Action, the Office of the Political Ombudsman, and of course, the exceptional youth here in this Parliament, the program will continue to grow and inspire more of our young leaders to participate in and promote involvement in democracy and good governance. Thank you all, and I look forward to an exciting debate.
Help me welcome to bring greetings Mr. Kai Bridgewater, Chairman, Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica.
The Honorable Pernell Charles, Speaker of the House of Representatives. The Honorable Alanda Terrelong, Minister of State in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. The Honorable Floyd Green, Minister of State in the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries. Mr. Dwayne Vaz, Opposition Spokesperson on Youth and Entertainment. Other specially invited guests, youth parliamentarians, members of the media and public, good morning. It is my distinct honor and privilege to bring greetings this morning on behalf of the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica. It is always a great day in the history of our nation when we have youth from various walks of life come together to identify and, more importantly, share solutions to the issues that are plaguing our nation, such as abortion, climate change, crime, and the lack of youth political participation. I am also personally elated to see so many of our youth interested in the political process, serving this year as youth members of parliament. This is despite the unfortunate and negative connotations that are associated with politicians and politics in Jamaica. I personally believe that politics is the most noble form of service that one can give to one's country. It is the most effective and efficient vehicle through which you can influence and create the country that you would like to see. But colleagues, while we respect and emulate our leaders, we are called to be different from previous generations. We are called to raise the bar. We are called to lead, inspire, and transform our great nation. Jamaica's youth are lit. Persons often have the notion that the youth are the future of our nation. But by being here today, we wholeheartedly show that we reject that notion. We are not the future, we are the present, we are the now. We can't wait until our time, because as I always say, the present that you don't get involved in today may lead to a future you don't want to see tomorrow. So I urge our leaders not to let today be a talk shop. Listen to our youth and take their recommendations seriously, because they are intelligible, feasible, and grounded in research. And to our youth parliament, rest assured that the Youth Advisory Council will be holding the government accountable and following up on all of the recommendations tabled today. However, it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge the various stakeholders that made today and this year possible. Firstly, the Minister of State, the Honorable Alanda Terrelong, and the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, particularly the Youth Division, for their never-ending support of the program. Secondly, the National Integrity Action for their invaluable training sessions and guidance throughout the entire year. Thirdly, the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica, the steering committee of the Youth Parliament that I have an honor of being a part, who worked assiduously throughout the year to ensure that this year's Youth Parliament was a resounding success. And last, but by no means least, you, the youth parliamentarians who stayed the course through thick and thin, executing your individual constituency projects and rallying together to execute larger county projects. You are the stars of today's movie, so please enjoy every moment of it. But youth parliamentarians, this is not the end. I urge you to continue the good work you have been doing in your communities, as well as continuing to advocate for the issues that are affecting the people of our country. And I hope, actually, I know that in a few years, many of you will be sitting here in your own right as members of the Senate and members of the Parliament. With this being said, youth parliamentarians, all the best.
This Honorable House now resumes its sitting. Statements by ministers.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister intends to make a statement today, however, at a later stage. We will move for the recommittal of items to enable him to make that statement prior to the adjournment of the sitting.
The question is that item statements by ministers be deferred and recommitted at a later stage today. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? Ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, laid on the table of the House today are the following. Report from the Youth Parliament, County of Cornwall project, titled Emancipate the Youth, Finding the Gender in You. Report from the Youth Parliament, County of Middlesex, County project titled Bringing Back a Come and Cheer for Peace. Report from the Youth Parliament, County of Surrey, project titled Violence Prevention through mediation.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, report from committees, notices of motions given orally,
Mr. Speaker.
Member from Portland Eastern, Tashwin Davis.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move, whereas post-election research reflects low participation of minority groups in the election process, as well as limited knowledge among young people of the political and parliamentary procedures, and whereas there has been the creation of platforms such as the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica, the National Youth Council of Jamaica, as well as the codification of youth political participation in the National Youth Policy. Be it resolved that the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica 2019 debates current deficiencies and the potential improvements on the matter of youth political participation. And be it further resolved that the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica facilitates the advancement of emerging recommendations from this debate to the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information for the government to consider and develop the necessary policies to effect implementation. Mr. Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion.
Tamoy Logan, member from Southwest St. Anne.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice that the next meeting of the House I will move the motion, whereas Section 72 and 73 of the Offences Against the Persons Act outlaws the practice of abortion in Jamaica. And whereas there have been several pro-life and pro-choice discussions and debates on the issue, which has been brought to the attention of the Joint Select Committee of the Houses of Parliament. And further, the Joint Select Committee of the Houses of Parliament have accepted and are now reviewing the various submissions made by the civil society on the matter. Be it resolved that the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica 2019 debates the youth perspective on the pro-life and pro-choice views of the demography. And be it further resolved that the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica commits to the advancement of emerging recommendations from the debate of the Ministry of Health and Wellness for the government to consider and develop the necessary policies to effect implementation. Mr. Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion.
Shanil Samon, member from Central St. James.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move, whereas mechanisms have been employed by successive government administrations, civil society groups, and community-based organizations to limit the scourge of crime and violence, they still fail to focus on social conditions that predispose the population to recurring violent behavior. Be it resolved that the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica 2019 debates violence prevention, including issues such as poor parenting and its relations to increases in violence, the reduction of social constructs that predispose people to violent behavior, the utilization of social entrepreneurship to prevent violence, and the best practices employed by similar countries to prevent violence. Be it further resolved that the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica commits to the advancement of emerging recommendations from this debate to the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information for the government to consider and develop the necessary policies to effect implementation. Mr. Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at the later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion.
Brian Henry, member from Southwest St. Andrew.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move, whereas Jamaica has seen rising in temperatures, pervasive coastal erosion, and debilitating droughts and infrequent rainfall activities, and whereas the government has a ban on plastic, a pending ban on styrofoam, and the announcement of the 3 Million Tree Project, be it resolved that the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica 2019 debates the impact of climate change on health, food and water security, the financing of climate action, and the integration of urban planning into climate action strategies. And be it further resolved that the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica commits to the advancement of emerging recommendations from this debate to the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation for the government to consider and develop the necessary policies to effect implementation. Mr. Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion.
Devin McIntosh, member from Southern St. James.
Mr. Speaker, often it is said that the youths are our future and the inheritors of the earth. And while we laud the efforts made in support of this, much work is left to be done. According to the Global Youth Development Index and Report 2016, the participation of young people into the political life of their communities shows the extent to which they are empowered and engaged in the political process and have a voice in the development of
Sorry. Please sit down. Sorry. Questions and answers to questions. motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to sittings of the House, motions for leave to introduce bills, presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained, public business.
Mr. Speaker, it is intended that we take 4 motions today for the debate. Motion regarding youth political participation brought by the member from Portland Eastern. Motion regarding abortion reform brought by the member from St. Anne Southwestern, and motion regarding youth violence prevention brought by the member from St. James Central, and motion regarding climate change brought by the member from St. Andrew Southwestern. In the order which I have stated them, Mr. Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable the members to take the motions, notice of which was given earlier.
The question is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the members to take the motions, notice of which they gave earlier. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? Ayes have it. Tashwan Davis, member from Portland Eastern.
Mr. Speaker, the National Youth Parliament for the second year has sounded to the government of Jamaica that our youth are serious about meaningful political participation. The level of youth political participation is low, owing in part to a lack of awareness and public education about basic governance and democratic processes. This House calls upon the Ministry of Education to have the civics curriculum be revamped and re-implemented in the secondary schools. The Jamaica Information Service cites civics as a subject which educates students about their rights, duties, and responsibility as citizens, the structure and functions of government, the significance of national symbols and emblems, among other things. According to the role of civic education by Margaret Branson, civic education in a democracy is education in self-government. Democratic self-government means that citizens are actively involved in their own governance. They do not just passively accept handed-down decisions that disregards the people's voice. Mr. Speaker, the integration of civics in schools has been inconsistent and irregular. It is not a new idea, and it does not require substantially large physical resources for implementation. Its principal administrator, the Ministry of Education, must accept responsibility for the inadequate monitoring and prioritization of civics and move to correct its failure post-haste. Beyond the walls of traditional classroom are youth who are no longer engaged in education or training, who, in order to participate politically, need to be empowered with information. This House challenges the National Youth Council of Jamaica, its vibrant youth clubs, and the Youth Innovation Centers island-wide to infuse critical components of the civics curriculum in their periodic workshops and seminars. The promotion of grassroots awareness will lead to increased good local governance. Additionally, the government of Jamaica must be congratulated for supporting the National Secondary Students Council, Jamaica Union of Tertiary Students, and the National Youth Parliament, which in their unique ways simulates various areas of governance and the democratic process within the different youth demographics. These are examples of programs that prepare and expose youth meaningfully and ought to be continued. Statistics have shown that young people who are taught civic knowledge, civic skills, and civic discomposition, which is a part of the civic curriculum, have helped citizens to be good governance with moral skills. We must help restore political enthusiasm in Jamaican youth. Enthusiasm grounded and stirred by information and sound systematic public education. Mr. Speaker, God bless us and the people of Jamaica. Thank you.
On youth political participation, Devin McIntosh, member from Southwest Southern St. James.
Mr. Speaker, often it is said that the youths are our future and the inheritors of the earth. And while we laud the efforts made in support of this, much work is to be done. According to the Global Youth Development Index and Report 2016, the participation of young people in the political life of their communities shows the extent to which they are empowered and engaged in the political process and have a voice in the development of their communities. It is the engagement in activities through which people develop and express their opinions on one's country and how it is governed and try to take part in and shape the decisions that affect their lives. Findings received from the EOJ show that the general election in 2016 recorded the lowest voter percentage turnout post-independence except for the year of 1983. Additionally, youth between ages 18 and 34 made up the largest number of new enumerations in the last general election, despite that the same demographic consistently record the lowest percentage turnout on election day. Notwithstanding that, there are also problems related to youth non-tendencies to join or represent as candidates in our elections, and the voting method still being utilized being outdated. The key, therefore, Mr. Speaker, to youth political participation will be to unearth the factors attributing to the disconnect if we have any hopes of remedying the situation at hand. Mr. Speaker, as I am a man of few words and greater action, let us delve into the facts at hand. Mr. Speaker, Jamaica's government primarily consists or is dominated by two political parties. And it is interesting to note, Mr. Speaker, that Jamaica has had 46 political parties since 1962, yet the average Jamaican would be aghast to name at least 3. The level of control can only be detrimental in cases where party ideology doesn't align with the voters' own, corruption being evident in both, thereby reducing the trust and participation, along with the case of independent candidates faced with exorbitant amounts in order to finance campaigns, and major parties being guided by financial lobbyists. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, as a first step measure, this system needs to be modified to allow for the full and truest exercise of our democracy, a representative democracy where candidates and not just party are held accountable by the people. This youth parliament therefore recommends campaign finance reform, where public financing for the electoral campaigns be mandated into law, such that parties all have a fair chance of representation, especially with young people. Especially with young people not being able to, in most cases.
Mr. Nicholas McIntyre, Minister of Tourism. Step down.
Turmoil, political turmoil, Mr. Speaker. Poor youth political participation is globally recognized cataclysm that threatens the virtue of our democratic system. There is a global youth population of 42% according to the World Bank in 2017, yet only about 44% partake in the electoral process. As stated by the United Nations 2017 Global Youth Report, the future for a healthy, God-sent democracy looks bleak. But, Mr. Speaker, if we look even closer at our own democracy, the future seems even bleaker. Young people struggle to gain the respect of public officials and are seen as lacking the skills and experience to engage in political activity and lead positive change in their communities. This clearly depicts bad political health, for the country and a misrepresentation and exclusion of the majority of the electorate or youth. This exclusion, combined with limited educational and economic opportunities, can leave young people both idle and frustrated with the status quo. The Ministry of Education, Youth and Information of Jamaica has proposed the National Youth Policy of Jamaica 2017 to 2030 and has been able to reach a stage of approval for execution. The policy provides a framework within which youth can be supported in pursuit of their goals and contribute to the success of their local communities and the nation as a whole. Mr. Speaker, in retrospect and in particular on the issue of youth political participation, Goal 4 speaks specifically to seek and maximize youth participation in national and political decision-making processes. Mr. Speaker, a fundamental flaw observed in the National Youth Policy is that it lacks direct action for minority youth groups like disabled, the homeless, and persons living in poverty to have an equal voice and participation of the policy process and how the implementation will affect them. They are often discriminated against and in some cases politically victimized. Whereas the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica provides recommendation and policy affecting youth, Mr. Speaker, it is gravely limited by just that, talking. It's like a talk shop, Mr. Speaker. In an effort to maximize the impact and mandate of this platform, this House recommends that an allocation of physical resources be considered for them to be able to work with youth councils and clubs to mobilize these specific minority groups, Mr. Speaker. The National Youth Parliament of Jamaica, Mr. Speaker, further submits that the government mobilizes and link diverse vulnerable groups of youth around access to justice and fundamental human rights in the line with national objectives through the commitments.
Youth political participation. Janelle Todd, member from Eastern Hanover.
Which has been tabled at the National Youth Parliament before. But it is of such importance that we thought it best to re-engage this issue until the day that action, and I do mean progressive action, is taken by the government to implement this recommendation.
Settle down, member.
I imagine you must be wondering, what is so important that we felt the need to expand on this recommendation? And the answer to that is simple. The National Youth Parliament of Jamaica 2019 is suggesting that Jamaica step into the digital age. We are proposing the implementation of electronic voting with specific interest on the inclusion of the diaspora into the voting process.
Settle down.
Mr. Speaker, electronic voting, known colloquially as e-voting, is an election system that utilizes software platforms to securely record and process votes. It is time for Jamaica to join in on the positive outcomes experienced by other countries like Finland and Estonia due to the implementation of this system. According to a study done by Michael Alvarez et al., Estonia has had a total of 8 electronically enabled elections where eligible voters could cast ballots over the internet. Over the years, the total internet votes grew from a mere 2% in 2005 to approximately 30% in 2014 and 2015. But what is it about this system which leads to an increase in voter turnout and a general interest in the political process? There are benefits which instantly and directly affect the voters. For example, the fact that voting becomes a quick and painless process which requires very little effort from the voter, or the fact that this system eliminates errors in manual voter counting, which brings with it an accurate and swift publication of results. However, Mr. Speaker, the National Youth Parliament finds that the most significant benefit is the ability to facilitate the inclusion of the diasporic vote. E-voting enables persons to vote not only outside the confines of their constituency, but from any preferred location in the world. What does this mean? What does this mean for the diaspora in a practical sense? This means that Jamaican students which are enrolled in universities and colleges abroad can still exercise their right to vote. This means
Mr. Speaker, the member time for speaking having expired, I now move for the standing order to enable her to continue her speech to its completion, notwithstanding her
Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you for that privilege. This means, Mr. Speaker, that young Jamaican professionals that have migrated can still play a role in their country. Mr. Speaker, this government realizes the need to preserve the connection with Jamaicans abroad. That is evidence of that can be seen through the revised Jamaican National Diasporic Policy. So the question that should resound through this House, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, is why have we not implemented an electronic voting system yet? Thank you.
Mr. Tashwayne Davis, member from Portland Eastern.
Madam Speaker, this Honorable House concludes that on the topic of youth political participation, we reinforce our stance that the civics curriculum be re-implemented into schools, that a system of electronic voting and mobile polling, and also reforming the voting system to allow the diaspora to vote, be our final recommendations to the House. Madam Speaker, I now move for the motion to be agreed to.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Mr. Tamoy Logan, member from Southwest St. Anne.
Madam Speaker, Section 1312 of the Constitution of Jamaica indicates that nothing contained in or done under any law before the 2011 Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms came into force 2011 relating to sexual offenses, obscene publication, and offenses regarding the life of the unborn child shall be held to be in contravention of the provisions of the Charter. The above-mentioned provision is called a General Savings Clause. Such a clause essentially protects, preserves, and saves pre-independent Jamaican laws. In other words, Madam Speaker, The Savings Law Clause immunizes laws referred in Section 13.2 from constitutional review by the courts by any person in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, the existence of a Savings Law Clause in Section 13.12 results in the undermining of Section 19 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms. Section 19 allows citizens to ask the court to review bills or laws to assess their constitutionality. The section is important as it considers the full spectrum of time. Was the right infringed? Is the right being infringed? Will the right be likely to be infringed? So you see, Madam Speaker, the clause in the Constitution affects the law on abortion. It restricts persons in Jamaica from launching a constitutional action on the abortion provisions. In Jamaica, unlawful abortions are criminalized, Section 72 and 73, forbid a girl or woman from procuring her abortion, and it forbids persons from assisting the woman to carry out an abortion. The status quo in the Constitution is therefore outside of the hands of the citizens to seek a change. It is offensive to the principles of the domestic society. Making some laws unreviewable by the courts cannot be how we continue in this country. It is robbing our people of the right to legal process. The National Youth Parliament therefore recommends the following. The Parliament must begin the conversation on whether Savings Law Clause have the utility in Jamaica in 2019. Madam Speaker, no law should be immune from review. Such a construct is inconsistent with the principles of the citizens' participation in legal processes. Parliament should amend Section 13.12 to remove Section C, the life of the unborn child. The Savings Law Clause creates the situation where Parliament is the only entity which can decriminalize abortion. Political will be required to do this, as the options for changing the abortion law in Jamaica squarely rest on the Parliament. Once the first step has been taken, only then can a conversation be truly had on how Jamaica intends to address the matter on having safe, planned termination of pregnancies.
Mr. Romario White, member of West Central St. Andrew. Members of the House.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to provide a medical perspective on the issue of abortion. Let me first offer a real-life case on the matter. A 14-year-old girl was admitted to the Victoria Jubilee Hospital for complications related to a botched abortion. She was hemorrhaging from a cervical laceration and died within 4 hours. A story such as this is not uncommon in our country, Madam Speaker, and it demonstrates how necessary it is to address the issue of abortion in our country. It is a shame, Madam Speaker, that a 19th century law has remained unaltered since its adoption, putting our women of reproductive age at increased risk of death. Direct maternal deaths are defined as those of women as a consequence of pregnancy itself, which include complications of unsafe abortions that account for 13% of maternal deaths worldwide, according to the World Health Organization. With no access to safe abortions, women, especially of low socioeconomic backgrounds, look to the black market to have abortions performed. UNICEF Jamaica has identified unsafe abortions as a growing issue in Jamaica, moving from the 5th leading cause of direct maternal deaths in the early 2000s to now the 3rd leading cause of direct maternal deaths. It is further explained that the legal status of abortion precludes any meaningful effort to reduce these unnecessary deaths. In other words, Madam Speaker, any attempt to lessen the impact of unsafe abortions on maternal mortality will not be effective until its legal status is addressed. Most recent statistics show that Jamaica's maternal mortality ratio stands at 80 per 100,000 live births, while Barbados, with more relaxed abortion laws, has a maternal mortality ratio of 27 per 100,000. In fact, Madam Speaker, an ecological study by Lat et al. In 2019 stated that countries with restrictive abortion laws reduced their maternal mortality ratio by an average of 25 per 100,000 after relaxing said laws, regardless of gross domestic product. The Youth Parliament recommends that the government adopts the Barbadian model regarding the legalization of abortion, which divides provisions dependent on the maturity of the pregnancy. Below 12 weeks, which corresponds to the end of the first trimester, 12 to 20 weeks, and 20 weeks and above, the halfway mark of the pregnancy. Requirements in Barbados' Act on Termination of Pregnancy are risk to the mother's life, grave injury to physical and mental health of the mother, rape, incest, and where the child would suffer severe physical or mental abnormalities. Addressing these issues is likely to result in the needed reduction in maternal mortality in this country. However, Madam Speaker, we propose that there are certain prerequisites necessary to decrease demand for abortion, such as the establishment of women's reproductive clinics at type 3 to 5 health centers and increasing the availability of acceptable contraception. Certainly, in addressing abortion, Madam Speaker, Jamaica will be on its way in fulfilling.
The Speaker's time has now expired.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Mr. James Speart, member from Central Westmoreland.
Mr. James.
Who have been given the opportunity to be born and were themselves not terminated. The laws governing the world that human life begins upon ejection from the womb of the mother is an obsolete ideology in comparison to where modern medicine is currently. The British Medical Journal of Medical Ethics, volume 27, issue 2 by R. Gillian et al. States that in fetal development between weeks 7 and 12, there is a clear presence of the brain and brainwave activity along with the development of the capacity for sentience, which is the ability to sense pain, touch, and sound. Between weeks 6 and 12, the heart begins to beat, and the child with its own completely different genetic identity from the mother, making the process of abortion a surgical death to the fetus. Furthermore, the law accepts the death of the brain as a fundamental determinant of the cessation of life, which raises the question, why is this principle not reciprocated to the commencement of life? The start of our own moral and legal personhood as a living entity. During ultrasound images of the fetus within the womb, it shows the child's open mouth with a silent scream, awaiting its imminent extinction. The Hippocratic Oath, taken by all medical practitioners speaking on abortion, was challenged by the 1983 Declaration of Geneva Amendment, which removed the commencement of life at conception clause, still upholds the obligation to do no harm. Subject to the legislative determination of when life begins, terminating a pregnancy due to fetal abnormalities is an act of complete hostility and contempt against the laws of this country. The Disabilities Act of Jamaica, Part 4, Section 24, 25, and 34 states that a disabled entity is entitled to the equality of rights, similar to all other individuals, inclusive of the rights of life and health provisions to live a full and productive life without discrimination. The Youth Parliament strongly believes that the endeavors to terminate the pregnancy is a breach against this law and the UN Convention on the Rights of the Person with Disabilities, Article 3, Section B and E, as fetal abortions on these grounds are morally repugnant, as it would be to eliminate adults with similar conditions. For these reasons, the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica strongly suggests that the Jamaica legislature must clearly codify when human life begins, to determine when terminating a pregnancy will not constitute taking a human life. Madam Speaker, given the divisive nature of this national issue, this House submits two questions that should be put to the people of Jamaica at the next general election. 1, when does life begin? 2, whether abortion must be allowed conditionally or unconditionally. Lastly, with the national goal of effective social protection under Jamaica's Vision 2030 Goal 1, with Jamaicans being empowered to achieve
The speaker's time has now expired.
Thank you.
I now move for the suspension of the standing order to enable him to continue his speech to its completion, notwithstanding limit on speaking.
The question is that the member be given additional time to complete his speech. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Lastly, with the national goal of effective social protection under Jamaica's Vision 2030 Goal 1, with Jamaicans being empowered to achieve their fullest potential, is no longer a possibility towards making Jamaica the place of choice to live, work, and raise families or do business, when we have already aborted the inheritors to our efforts. Thank you.
Ms. Tidra Morris, member from West Central St. James.
Madam Speaker, imagine a country where the pastor's wife can fly to another territory to secure their daughter's abortion, stigma-free, while the pastor continues to preach from his pulpit against abortion, and the women and girls in the congregation must endure that shame. Imagine a country where a girl or woman is subjected to less than acceptable methods of abortion due to 19th century abortion laws. These are the lived realities of our Jamaican women and girls. In a report from the World Health Organization in 2014, it was estimated that between 6,000 to 22,000 abortions are performed in Jamaica each year. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, in the year 2017, between January and September, one of our public hospitals had seen more than 100 cases of botched abortions. And let's not forget in that same year, where a couple in Middlesex terminated more than 150 pregnancies using products from a garden in their backyard. Every woman should have the right to secure a safe abortion from a qualified health professional at the best facilities and using properly sterilized instruments. Madam Speaker, in a Supreme Court hearing, American attorney Sarah Weddington suggests some necessary reasons why abortion should be legalized. Firstly, women should have that moral right to decide what to do with their bodies. Secondly, legalizing abortion is a vital tool to advancing gender equality. This would give boys and girls equal opportunity without interrupting their studies, and men and women equal opportunities within the work environment. Thirdly, with abortion outlawed as they are, women who are forced to seek out illegal abortions are put at risk of complications such as uterine perforation. Madam Speaker, are we willing to pay the high price of such antiquated hegemonic laws? Madam Speaker, like the second speaker said, let's examine what's happening in our Caribbean community. Guyana's Progressive Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act of 1995 allows women to terminate pregnancies without facing any legal penalties. Like Guyana, this youth parliament believes that a name change of the current Abortion Act is required. This would make the abortion pill a lot easier to swallow. It should be called the Termination of Pregnancy Act. Madam Speaker, this parliament wishes to include in this act penalties mirroring that of the Guyanese Act in Medical Termination of Pregnancy, Section 10, where medical practitioners and conversely pregnant women can be charged. Speaker's time has now expired. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, the member time for speaking having expired. I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable her to continue her speech to its completion, notwithstanding her limit on speaking.
The question is that the standing order be suspended in order for the member to complete the completion of her speech. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Alongside these changes in the laws relating to abortion, the Youth Parliament encourages the government to facilitate pre- and post-abortion care services, inclusive of pregnancy tests and counseling. In the end, Madam Speaker, it is our poorer women who will suffer the most under these draconian abortion laws. The rich and middle class will be on the next flight to Guyana, while our poorer women will be stuck in the waving gallery. Thank you very much.
Ms. Ruthan Ben-Gouche, member from Eastern St. Andrew. Members.
Madam Speaker, I call upon this honorable House to recall the December 2017 story of Alexia Parker, who conceived a child fathered by the man who raped her, causing national outrage. 12 years old, her pelvis too small, her body too frail, her mind unprepared to give birth, but under Jamaican law, she had no choice but to carry the fetus. Today, I will make submissions regarding the basis on which the Jamaican legislation should expand the current offenses against the Persons Act, Section 72 and 73. Firstly, the NYPJ submits that the law should be amended to allow for abortion to be performed if a child has been conceived by rape or incest as defined by Section 3, Subsection 1 and Section 7 of the Sexual Offences Act respectively. Several countries have adopted abortion laws which have recognized rape and incest as a legal ground for access to safe abortions. In October 2019, the Georgia Heartbeat Bill, which proposed to make exceptions for rape and incest victims, was rejected by American lawmakers. Had it been passed, medical professionals would have been allowed to perform abortions up to 6 weeks into the pregnancy, but only if the victim files police charges. Statistics from the Jamaica Constabulary Force reveal that 473 women were raped in 2016, and nearly 50% of these cases involved children. The Human Rights Committee General Comment number 36 on the right to life requires state parties to permit abortion in cases of rape and incest. The Committee Against Torture also critiques states who have abortion laws that do not have accommodations for rape and incest, and encourage the states to allow free access to abortion care where such cases arise. The World Health Organization has also supported similar recommendations for states. The NYPJ urges the government of Jamaica not to use the laws of the land to punish victims of rape and incest by forcing unprepared mothers, traumatized girls like Alexia Parker, to carry for 9 months and give birth to a child, themselves being children. Children producing children. Madam Speaker, if the legislation denies this conditional amendment, we call upon the church and the government to provide, improve, and expand its child care and protection services to accept babies who would have otherwise been aborted. The Good Nature Institute in 2 major studies showed that only 7% of women stated that their abortion... Speaker's time has now expired. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member time for speaking having expired, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable her to continue her speech to its completion, notwithstanding her limit on speaking.
Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
The Good Nature Institute in 2 major studies showed that only 7% of women stated that their abortion was done for a health reason with themselves or the baby, and less than 0.5% reported that their abortion was because they became pregnant due to being raped. The intention here is not to downplay rape, but the research shows 92% of abortions in America, where abortions are available on request, are purely elective and done on healthy women to end the fetus's life. Madam Speaker, this House submits that a woman who has become pregnant due to rape or incest not be forced to choose an illegal method, but be given the option to seek a legal and healthy abortion. To change the abortion laws unconditionally would fling wide the floodgates to persons who may likely abuse this access of abortion services, as has been done in other states. Thank you.
Mr. Tamoy Logan, Southwest St. Anne.
Madam Speaker, I now move that the motion be agreed to.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Youth Violence Prevention, Shanil Salmon, member from Central St. James.
Youth violence has long plagued our society. This monster has taken our youth and given us vicious, heartless stories after stories. Today, the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica will seek to identify viable solutions to prevent any further recurrence and advise the government of our stance on the issue at hand.
Mr. Roger Danvers, member from East Central St. Andrew, Minister of State, Economic Growth and Job Creation with responsibility for Works and Deputy Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker, right now, a 4-year-old girl is wondering why she's hearing her father's name on the news. She's wondering why all her family members are crying. Her mother is wrestling with the reality of how to tell her only daughter that her father is dead. That is Jamaica we live in today, Madam Speaker. One where crime and violence trends more than conversation leaders on Twitter. Madam Speaker, it is important that I submit to this honorable House that there's a fundamental difference between crime and violence. The response to crime is reactive, and the response to violence is proactive. Therefore, the government of Jamaica must take a proactive approach if it is serious about the position of youth violence prevention. We can't take a shut the brakes approach. It is important to note that youth violence is an epidemic, so much so that in 2002, a study by the World Health Organization revealed that youth violence occurs at an alarming rate of 9.2 per 100,000. This means violence is the leading cause of death for young people, and that is a travesty. The National Youth Policy posits that Jamaica's youths are between the ages of 15 and 29, and of that number, a significant portion was arrested for various felonies in 2015, with a predicted increase in the next decade. Walk with me, Honorable House. On this side, we believe that focusing on the causative factors by simply assessing the typology of violence. According to the World Health Organization, violence can be classified in several typologies. However, the most debilitating form affecting youth can be broken down into family and community violence. Even Dr. Herbert Gale, social violence anthropologist, posits that violence begins in the home. This means youth violence is preventable. New and innovative policies are needed. For that reason, the National Youth Parliament is proposing a beat and teach approach. We will beat the problems we are facing by teaching the opportunities that arise from them. Madam Speaker, we will beat the problem by implementing a positive parenting program model. Madam Speaker, we will beat the problem by implementing a parenting leave law. Madam Speaker, and finally, we'll beat the problem by implementing a tax exemption for employers of at-risk youth in the private sector. The positive parenting program model is one of the most effective violence-based parenting programs in the world. Through the National Parenting Support Commission, mandatory parenting classes will be implemented for every expectant parent who accesses the public health system for prenatal and postnatal care. Implementing the parenting leave law, Madam Speaker, we need our fathers. The maternity leave law should be repealed and replaced with a parenting leave law, granting both mothers and fathers paid time off work.
The Speaker's time has now expired.
Madam Speaker, the member time for speaking haven't expired. I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable him to continue his speech to its completion, notwithstanding his time of speech.
Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Praise God.
Members?
Implementing a parenting leave law. We need our fathers. The maternity leave law should be repealed and replaced with a parenting leave law, granting both mothers and fathers paid time off work to help care for their children. This existing model in Russia purports that mothers, fathers, guardians, and other relatives who provide care for a child may take paid parental leave. The tax exemption
The government should extend employment tax credits to employers who provide job opportunities, particularly to a defined minimum number of at-risk inner-city and rural young men, allowing them the ability to earn lawfully to help care for themselves and inadvertently grow the economy. This model has been proven to work in African states like South Africa and Kenya. It is the hope of the National Youth Parliament that the proposals made here today in this honorable house will move the movers and shake the shakers of this country. Madam Speaker, we need to move from analysis to action, from reactiveness to proactiveness, and by so doing as a nation, we'll be able to stand up for justice, brotherhood, and peace. God bless National Youth Parliament. God bless youth of Jamaica. And God bless Jamaica land itself.
Ms. Shanika Abbott, member from St. Andrew Western, Minister of Justice. Members,
$1,245. That is the number of youths ages 15 to 24 arrested in 2008 for Category 1 crimes, which include murder, rape, and robbery. Madam Speaker, this is cause for alarm. Ideas and programs about how best to solve the violence problem and building a more peaceful society have been implemented over the last few decades. However, Jamaica lacks scientific evidence which identifies effective prevention strategies and the conditions that maximize the likelihood of program success. Madam Speaker, we simply cannot continue to pump resources into interventions that are not working. We must be strategic to ensure efforts are not duplicated. Often, programs operate simultaneously, making it difficult to unravel respective contributions. Madam Speaker, while data does exist on violence intervention programs that can provide a useful starting point, there needs to be sufficient and systematic monitoring and evaluation of what works and what does not. Madam Speaker, the recent announcement by the Prime Minister of the launch of the Violence Prevention Commission, as well as the special mention made for the release of the Child Diversion Act later this month, shows that the government is moving in the right direction. Though commendable, the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica recommends a national risk assessment be done, specifically identifying the communities, children, youth, and schools that are at greatest risk. This will be directly fed into a centralized database or repository. This database or repository will be established in such a way that every organization, both public and private, that wish to launch a social intervention program can access information on violence specifically related to youths. We propose a policy which mandates that all organizations, be it private or public, that carry out any intervention relating to youth in crime or youth crime prevention be required to present a monitoring and evaluation framework and should provide a fulsome report to be added to the repository. Likewise, in the Netherlands, a similar method is followed, where an electronic online archive is used to illustrate programs that counter youth violence. This model illustrates the integrated approach designed to address gang violence at a local level, and it is organized by their municipality in cooperation with the police, their public prosecutor service, and their security and justice ministry. This project would be beneficial in Jamaica as it would promote access to data that would provide insight into what policies and initiatives have been implemented and how successful or unsuccessful they have been in meeting their missions and achieving their intended results. Madam Speaker, it is time for us to plan strategically to reduce youth violence in Jamaica. It is time for us to protect our youths.
Ms. Tanisha Watson, member from Western Hanover.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, our country has been graced with the excellence at which our Health Minister, Dr. Christopher Tufton, gets our citizens to be more health conscious. If you don't want pop down and fenke, you feel run mosquito or run with dengue. Of course, this is a popular jingle, and we have known to use this as a social marketing strategy, and it is influential to behavior change among Jamaicans. The opposition sees it fit for these same strategies to be applied to youth violence. Social marketing is the application of traditional and contemporary marketing principles towards the promotion of health behavior change. This can propel the voluntary change that reshape their environment to make behavior change more advantageous. Madam Speaker, this Honorable House proposes that violence prevention among youth be treated as a public health issue, which uses a data-driven and quantifiable approach. Dr. Elizabeth Ward, chairman of the Violence Prevention Alliance, stated in an article in the Jamaica Observer dated September 30, 2019, that crime was the epidemic that was doing the most harm, apart from sexually transmitted diseases and food deficiency disorders. It is on this, Madam Speaker, the backdrop of that youth violence prevention is seen as a public health issue. Youth violence can be framed as a public health issue as it affects the health services, which are burdened by a plethora of gun violent cases. The House proposes that a three-step approach in implementing social marketing be used: research, implementation, and evaluation. In this three-step process, research is key. Doing focus groups in violence-plagued communities will help in identifying the specific issues as well as who they affect. The social institutions also, Madam Speaker, should be integrated in order to create that platform for young people to have key social skills. Non-government organizations and community-based groups should use incentives and non-incentives in the social marketing plan to attract young people, and this also calls for the harmonizing of relevant ministries. In addition, social media are main communication channels through which young people get information. The opposition proposes that in the event of the execution of this plan, social media influencers use to promote and create a brand for youth violence prevention. Since there is an advent of YouTube influencers in Jamaica and across the world, and Flow has revised their internet plans to unlimited YouTube, why not use these channels to keep up with the technological age? In 2012, the Michigan Youth Violence Prevention Center used social marketing as a means of stemming bullying, gun violence, and any other violence that affects young people. To conclude,
the Speaker's time has now expired.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Ms. Kimon Roper, member from Eastern St. Thomas.
Madam Speaker, our future is dying at its own hands, and we must prevent it. Youth violence, according to the World Health Organization, involves a range of aggressive acts, from physical fighting to assault and homicide. And so the Youth Parliament defines youth violence prevention as the effective mitigation of these acts. This is necessary to achieve our Vision 2030 goal of having a secure, safe, and just society. It was earlier that our own State Minister Terry Long mentioned that one of our policy goals is reintegration of our youth. And so this Youth Parliament supports the implementation of an expulsion and reintegration policy, an ER policy, to supplement the existing child diversion and safety and security policies, effectively targeting and preventing physical, interpersonal violence among youth. The child diversion policy provides alternatives to incarcerating juvenile offenders, as according to Minister Chuck, many adult criminals are persons who at a tender age got into conflict with the law and did not get a chance to change. The safety and security policy guidelines from the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information are also geared toward the protection of children. And while we do appreciate the overlap between children and youth, there are many youth, Madam Speaker, over the age of 18 who are not targeted by these policies. We can improve them by broadening their scope to target minorities in our youth population. The WHO report on violence and health affirms that youth violence rates are higher in countries where social protection policies are weak, and the Ministry of National Security's 5-pillar strategy for crime prevention outlines that crime prevention through social development is a long-term preventative approach. This is what Jamaica needs, Madam Speaker. Our government has undertaken socially driven actions and initiatives to prevent youth violence. The Jamaica Integrated Community Development Project used school-based violence prevention through social intervention to train over 300 youth in entrepreneurship, mediation, and other areas. And the Ministry of Labour and Social Security also invested $10 million, Madam Speaker, in 200 vulnerable youth through the Steps to Work program, reintegrating these youth into the formal education system and labour market to reduce the risk of youth violence. Significant impact has been made, and we should aim to ensure that every at-risk youth benefits from these programs. We must implement policies to protect youth and prevent youth violence. We've seen steps to prevent youth violence by socializing children from an early age and by reintegrating unattached youth to society. We want to fill the gap, Madam Speaker, and impact youth about to become unattached who are not children. The Youth Parliament holds that the government, through the MOEYI and the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, implement the ER policy to prevent youth violence. This ER policy would provide...
The Speaker's time has now expired.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Ms. Shanil Samon, member of Central St. James.
Scamming, drug trade, and gun trade are all a part of the black market that become very attractive to our young people when no alternative to meaningful, value-added employment is available. These, as we have seen, has wreaked havoc on our society. For decades, Jamaican youth have been known to be at risk in the socio-economic context in the country. A report from the UNODC 2010 states that a significant proportion of these violent acts are carried out by individuals, as well as groups and gangs engaged in the organized crime supported by the drug trade. While the gangs are sustained by a number of factors, a critical support comes from the monies they generate through its activities. Furthermore, in a study by Knife Horn 2017 suggests that there is a strong link between gang activities, organized criminal enterprise and violence, and that the cost manifests itself in rising health bills, increasing security costs for business, and increasing opportunity cost of monies used to arrest these gang activities. Madam Speaker, while there have been many social intervention programs and projects to prevent entry into and further gang formation, in many developing nations, these have had only partial successes. This begs for an innovative and self-sustaining method. Madam Speaker, the opposition argues that social entrepreneurship and social enterprises can bridge the gap between crime and youth. More importantly, however, it offers a different approach to developing strategies, which are self-sustaining. Firstly, the framework involves a two-part approach. Secondly, it first tackles the unemployment and reintegration of youth through programs and systems, giving them a sense of purpose and a reason in being involved. We can look at Lifeyard, a social enterprise. Life Yard is an intergenerational, multicultural eco-village created by a group of young Rastafarians, growing up in a society corrupted by violence known as parade gardens. The population tends to be very youthful, with an average age group between 20 to 24 years. This initiative has seen over 100 youth from the community gainfully engaged. A study by Tapsell and Woods in 2010 argues that the focus is on creating something that it supports as social cause and the social community. Essentially, social entrepreneurship is the implementing of interventions which seeks to improve the quality of life for the beneficiaries. Case in point, Sing 2016 put it that Singapore's low crime rate is based on the principle that prevention is a community responsibility and crime prevention measures taken by the community can limit and reduce opportunities for the commission of crime. The community also has a role in reintegrating people into society. Madam Speaker, the central message of this is simply enough. Jamaica needs to complete the shift from an approach to security that is centrally concerned with regime protection to the full adoption of a citizen security approach that is consistently pursued in the context of human development. Social entrepreneurship has proven itself in this regard. Thank you.
Climate change. Mr. O'Brien Henry, member.
Speaker, taking into consideration the suggestion my fellow parliamentarians have put forward, I now move that the motion be agreed to.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Climate change, Mr. O'Brien Henry, member from Southwest St. Andrew.
Madam Speaker, climate change presents unique challenges to small island developing states. The difficulties that these countries face in effectively coping with climate change impacts are overwhelming in small island developing states because of their small geographic area, isolation, and exposure. The associated development challenges from sea level rise, altered rainfall patterns, and storm surges threaten to reverse progress made towards a sustainable development now and in the future. Most small islands already have high burdens of climate change sensitive diseases such as vector-borne and waterborne diseases like malaria, dengue, and diarrheal diseases, as well as threatened access to food supplies and clean water sanitation. And it is for this reason, Madam Speaker, we bring it into discussion.
Mr. Ronaldo Richards, member from Eastern St. Catherine, Minister of National Security.
We're faced with a crisis, a climate crisis, one that demands action and demands it now. Mr. Speaker, we have been called upon to discuss this imperative global and national issue. For far too long, the discussion has been an academic discourse, disconnected from its practical implications on the common man. According to the head of the Forestry Department and head conservator of Jamaica, in an article published in 2018, if current trends of global warming are to continue, Kingston will be one of the first cities in the world to experience climate departure, a significant degrading of a country's climate, so that in effect, a new climate normal would have been created. The impact of this reality on our country a small island developing state, vulnerable to exogenous shocks, imperils not only our economic health, but the physical health of our citizens. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, these effects are not taking place in abstraction. As the government's own Climate Action Policy Framework 2013 notes the deleterious impact of climate change on the health of citizens through a proliferation of water, airborne and vector-transmitted diseases. The World Health Organization, in its 2018 article entitled Climate Change and Health, notes that areas with weak health infrastructure, like Jamaica, will be least able to cope without assistance to prepare and respond. And between 2030 and 2050, climate change is expected to cause approximately 250,000 additional deaths per year. In fact, Mr. Speaker, according to statistics from the Ministry of Health, the confirmed cases of dengue outbreak in 2018 was 6 times higher than that of 2017, a 458% increase from 215 cases to 986. What this has meant is that relatively innocuous diseases are now on the brink of becoming pandemics. However, what are problems without solutions? As such, the National Youth Parliament proposes the phased implementation of a climate resilient strategic development plan to increase the resilience of our hospital infrastructure in areas that are prone to flooding and hurricanes. The director of the WHO's Public Health and Environment Department notes in the Reducing the Impact of Climate Change report of 2007 that when preparing for health effects, governments need to be aware that health needs to be a part of the different agendas, including planning, transport, and trade. Mr. Speaker, when you suddenly have more frequent respiratory illnesses...
Speaker's time for speaking has expired.
Thank you.
The question is, should the speaker continue? Those in favor? Aye. Those against? Ayes have it.
Thank you, House Leader, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, when you suddenly have more frequent respiratory illnesses, when mosquito bites result in massive casualties, it is attributable to climate change. Therefore, climate change is not an abstract academic discourse, but an everyman conversation with lasting implications. Thank you.
Next speaker on climate change, Ms. Janelle Small, Attorney General.
Change, the words of the Most Honorable Prime Minister, spells disaster. But if one embraces this challenge, it can easily become opportunity. According to the Natural Disaster Hotspot study done by the World Bank in 2008, Jamaica has the second highest economic risk exposure to 2 or more hazards. Similarly, in a report done by the Disaster Risk Reduction Center, the University of the West Indies in 2012, it was noted that between 1980 and 2008, Jamaica was affected by 27 natural hazards, with economic losses estimated at approximately US $2.6 billion. Now, the reality is the fight against climate change is not cheap. At the high-level luncheon for climate change, the Most Honorable Prime Minister stated that the annual estimated financing needs for climate change is approximately $349 billion per year. Currently, to finance climate action, Jamaica has entered into a number of multilateral agreements and initiatives, such as the Paris Agreement, the Green Climate Fund, amongst many others. And while we recognize the importance of partnership with other countries in this fight, this alone is not enough. Thus, Mr. Speaker, the National Youth Parliament puts forward the creation of the Jamaica Climate Smart Endowment Fund. This National Climate Fund will enable Jamaica to mobilize, pool, and utilize domestic sources of finance to ensure national ownership of climate financing. Now, such a fund is not a new idea. In fact, the United Nations Development Programme report in 2011 stated that national climate funds help countries to collect finance, coordinate, and account for them efficiently. Rwanda and Ethiopia are examples of countries with successful funds. The Rwanda Green Fund, since inception, has raised approximately $130 million for strategic climate resilience investments. Now, in order to finance this fund, we recommend the creation of the emission tax trading system. This system is a market-based instrument that would create a defined limit of overall emissions in the energy and transport sectors. Within this limit, stakeholders can decide to buy and sell emission rights with fines for exceeding limits. This would ensure that we achieve our climate target of reducing emissions under the 1999 Kyoto Protocol while gaining funds to adequately respond to climate change. The fund will also be financed in other ways, which will be expounded upon by my fellow colleague of the House. Members of this honorable House, we are the green warriors of tomorrow. Let us rise today. Mr. Speaker, now is the time to create a climate resilient Jamaica. Now is the time for the creation of the Climate Smart Endowment Fund. I thank you.
Member from Northeast St. Catherine, Javon Keys.
Mr. Speaker, as I add to the discourse on the need for strategies to adequately fund our local climate action needs, I recall a conversation I had with a friend of mine. She described Jamaica as a baby, needing to be rocked in the arms of each of us as citizens. Baby Jamaica is sick. We must act now. In this global context where Jamaica is, like most other small island developing states, SIDS, finding it difficult to fund climate action strategies, this makes international funding crucial. This also emphasizes the need for greater local responsibility to grow climate action strategies. The 2018 World Bank study entitled Advancing Disaster Risk Financing in Jamaica found that for adequate local disaster risk resilience and climate action needs response, the disaster contingency fund allocation must move from 500 million Jamaican dollars to $16 billion annually. That's 3,000% more than the original contingency fund budget. So while the Youth Parliament agrees with Prime Minister Holness on his advocacy at the UN General Assembly, urging developed countries to honor their commitment to mobilize at least $100 billion per year by 2020 for SIDS climate action needs, we must nurse baby Jamaica in our own hands. Mr. Speaker, we put forward as a part of the Climate Smart Endowment Fund put forward by my colleague, a Youth in Action Loan Facility. This is to be supported by a tax of $1 Jamaican on all items sold in PET plastic bottles locally. This is like the self-imposed cess adopted by the private sector, led by the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, JMEA. And with them, we would seek to extend that partnership. In 2018, a study executed by the Caribbean Policy Research Institute, CAPRI, exploring the feasibility of a plastic bottle deposit refund system, estimates that locally, some 650 million plastic bottles were produced. So, if we have $1 for every plastic bottle produced in Jamaica, that is 650 million Jamaican dollars. Mr. Speaker, we are boasting of an economic climate ideal for borrowing and lending. We must empower young people in this climate to venture into developing businesses which will support our climate action needs. Through this Youth in Action loan facility, we will achieve the goals of owning our climate action financing and at the same time boosting economic growth, tapping into the millions of dollars in earning potential projected for the green economy. Members of this honorable House, we are called to lead. Each of us must play our part now to champion the Sustainable Development Goals. Baby Jamaica cannot wait.
Settle down. Settle down. Settle down. Member from Northwest Manchester, Stephen Palmer.
Testing mic check.
Mr. Speaker, this Youth Parliament would like to put forward the important consideration of urban planning to mitigate the consequences of climate change. And the mechanism to be used is a reform of the National Housing Trust Act. Now, you've heard the term climate change a little too often, so I'll simply refer to it as the luring enemy that we're all fighting against. And Mr. Speaker, let me just remind you, we are losing. Jamaica needs to become climate offensive. Flutter like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Honestly, the abstract idea of climate change means nothing, but the repercussions that come afterwards are what truly makes my case. In Jamaica, there is an increase in temperatures, as we can see. In Jamaica, there's been an increase in the number of natural disasters. In Jamaica, there's been an increase in variable rain. Mr. Speaker, I will remind the Honorable House that prevention is better than cure, because the only way we can effectively fight against climate change is through prevention. That is, going green, doing the good things them.
Settle down, please.
Jamaica's National Energy Policy 2009 to 2030 proposes a policy framework that includes strategies which take into consideration renewable energy at the consumer level, but only promotionally. This means, Mr. Speaker, that there's no specific institutional change that will actually occur to bring about the needed use of renewable energy at that level. Mr. Speaker, let's use Denmark as our model. According to the European Union article published in 2018, Denmark generated 74% of its energy from renewable energy sources in 2017, making it the world leader in renewable power. And it's not just the country that is working towards it, but the citizens, the energy citizens, persons who are decentralizing the energy mix and installing smaller renewable power projects that are actually supported by their government and by their legal frameworks. So although we have a legal framework here in Jamaica, and although it purports the use of alternative energy and renewable energy, Jamaica fails to plan for renewable energy expansion. And that is our problem. And that is the recommendation. The recommendation is that we create a plan for renewable energy expansion. This is no time to shatter the bricks. For this reason, this Youth Parliament proposes the national reform of the National Housing Trust Act to be named NHT+. This reform will increase the use of renewable energy at the consumer level and beyond the promotional sense and create an institutional change in the NHT. The NHT reform through the alternative energy mortgage will allow NHT contributors not only get funding for houses and
Speaker's time for speaking has expired.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Speaker, the member time for speaking having expired, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable him to continue his speech to completion, notwithstanding limit on speaking.
The question is, should the Speaker be given more time? Those in favor?
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, as I was saying, the reform will increase the renewable energy at the consumer level beyond the promotional sense and create institutional change. The NHT reform through the alternative energy mortgage will allow the NHT to fund houses and the development of schemes in Jamaica, as well as fund solar panels and other alternative and renewable equipment and maintenance for domestic use. This will lower the carbon footprint of the country, and more importantly, it will be another great step for humanity, but a giant leap for Jamaica. These fundamental changes will secure Jamaica's future as the diamond of the Caribbean, economically too, and it will just prove that the standard of living must increase for me, for you, for everyone here, and for all the contributors that are investing in NHT. Mr. Speaker, this is Jamaica achieving sustainable goals sustainably. Thank you.
Brian Henry, member from Southwest St. Andrew.
Mr. Speaker, nature is angry, and we fool ourselves if we think. And we fool ourselves if we think we can fool nature, because nature always strikes back. And around the world, Mr. Speaker, nature is striking back with fury. Mr. Speaker, consider this. July was recorded by Statin as the hottest month ever, and the last 4 years being recorded as the hottest years ever recorded. The science is clear, and the evidence even clearer, that our food and water security is dwindling. Mr. Speaker, this youth parliament humbly submits that more attention be given to our food and water security and put Jamaica in a better seating to adapt to climate change. Mr. Speaker, climate change is recognized as a major threat that could affect Jamaica's strategy for growth and job creation. Agriculture, Mr. Speaker, is one of the most important economic sectors in Jamaica, employing over 180,000 farmers and has a share of 6.8 in GDP. It is also the most economic, climate-sensitive sector. The annual report of the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries 2015 to 2016 noted that the agricultural sector declined by 0.6% with no significant improvement the following years. This coincides with a similar decrease in rainfall the corresponding years. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we submit that this decrease in production is directly linked to climate change. With my colleague having spoken on urban planning for climate change, we believe that grey water washing can be integrated into future building construction and design to aid in proper wastewater management, to support irrigation systems within the agricultural sector. Grey water is deemed as wastewater without any contribution from toilet water. We recommend that this grey water be used for irrigation purposes, thus reducing the over-reliance on freshwater resources. Additionally, this will reduce the pollution caused by discharge of untreated grey water into freshwater resources. Mr. Speaker, grey water is advancing in water-conscious countries such as Australia, the US, Germany, and Cyprus. Rainfall has shifted to regions where farming isn't prominent.
The speaker's time for speaking has expired.
Mr. Speaker, the member time for speaking having expired, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable him to continue his speech to completion, notwithstanding his speaking.
The question is, should the member be given more time? Aye. Ayes have it.
Rainfall, Mr. Speaker, has shifted to regions where farming isn't prominent. And it is for this reason, Mr. Speaker, that rainwater harvesting and grey water recycling are so vital for periods of drought. Additionally, grey water recycling combined with genetic engineering will allow some crops to survive changes in pH and oxygen depletion from water. While these recommendations will not stop the problem of climate change, it will reduce the effect of dry spells on our farmers. These, Mr. Speaker, will aid in safeguarding the food and water security while aiding in wastewater management. Mr. Speaker, I now move that this motion be agreed to.
The question is that the motion be approved. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? Ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I now move for the recommittal of the item, statements by ministers. A statement from the Prime Minister on the Youth Parliament County Project.
The question is that the item statements by minister be recommitted. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? Ayes have it. Mr. Prime Minister. Settle down, members. Settle down. Settle down.
Mr. Speaker, it is with great esteem that I rise to address this honorable House. I am standing in a room beaming with young people who are noble, patriotic Jamaicans. I sit here listening to all the submissions made by all the hard-working youth parliamentarians. It has been a long road to this day. It is that hard-fought and well-deserved, with long nights of writing policy papers, making presentations, and drinking tea to stay warm. We have to give thanks. Thanks to the Minister of State, the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, the Honorable Orlando Terrellon, who has been an impactful presence to the program. We give thanks to the hard-working staff of the Youth and Adolescents Policy Division in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. We have to give our sincere thank you to Ms. Cara Knight,
Settle down, members.
Mr. Davy Hutton, Ms. Ruth Lawrence, the Honorable Donna Parchment Brown. Let us also give a tremendous thank you to Ms. Simone Campbell, Mr. Guyon Mitchell, and certainly not forgetting the Youth Advisory Council. We also have to give our gratitude to Professor Trevor Monroe, Ms. Jamie Ann Shivers, as well as the hard-working staff from the National Integrity Action. And we cannot forget Glory to Gloriana.
Members, settle down. Settle down, members. Settle down.
Members, I have seen where many of my fellow parliamentarians have become more than just friends. We have become family. Mr. Speaker, it is also with great sadness that I make mention of the passing of a loved one. We send our sincere condolences to Ms. Tavina Porter, a fellow youth parliamentarian who lost her mother during the tenure, and she has been going through a difficult time with her mother's passing. We must send our prayers to her, and we must let her know that, Tavina, we are with you. Mr. Speaker, it is with great pride that I applaud the county projects that carried out by every single youth parliamentarian here today. Members who carried out their duties diligently and creatively. We can rest assured knowing that the long hours we put in have made impactful on the community members' lives, and that our hard work is not in vain. At the community level, we rally together through partnerships, pull out projects for the community that will have long-lasting impacts, longer than our tenures, longer than it is that our upcoming other projects. And most of all, it is also pressing that we must also say we should continue to engage with the community. I also have to make mention to the various topics that we discussed here today, so that we all remember what it is that we did the long weekend workshop to discuss. Abortion, youth participation in political process, climate change, and violence prevention. We must never forget the efforts and energy put in to consider these submissions, and we must always strive to actually push forward. Even though we may not be doing these things past our tenure, we must also push. Even if they don't get considered by government right now, we must always push for these topics. Right. All right? I implore the Jamaican government to give ears and eyes to our submissions with due regard and the highest levels of importance. I humbly ask the governing political administration of our great nation to consider the views of every decision in the decision-making process. This, I believe, will give critical attainment of the Vision 2030, because as it stands, the youth will lead the charge as we make Jamaica the place to live, work, and raise families, and most importantly, do business. Mr. Speaker, no matter our views, no matter our positions, above all, we must always remember, out of many, we are one people.
Mr. Leader of the Opposition. Members, Members. Members, we are pressed for time.
Mr. Speaker, as I sat here as the leader of opposition, listen to the members from the right side and from the side of the government submitting their proposals. I zoned out for a moment and I started to think, Mr. Speaker, and this is my conclusion. The youths of Jamaica, yes, our Jamaica, are indeed lit. With that being said, I have to give credit to this platform, the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica. A platform that not only gives you the opportunity to collectively address national issues, but to develop interpersonal public speaking skills and the intrinsic standard of volunteerism through county projects and constituency participation. However, we face many challenges, but we put leadership, inspiration, and transformation first, second, and third. And as you can see, Mr. Speaker, success came forth. Today, we are given the opportunity to experience democratic governance by collectively bringing to the forefront issues that are affecting many youth and Jamaicans at large. Motion on issues related to abortion, climate action, youth violence prevention, and youth political participation underpins Jamaica's 2030 vision. That is a place to live, work, raise families, and do business. With this vision ahead, there is no time for procrastination because while a decade ago feels like yesterday, a decade from now is tomorrow. In practicality, it was a decade ago Usain Bolt has set a record of 19.19 in the 200 meter at the World Championship. That feels like yesterday, right? Similarly, it was also a decade ago that Jamaica recorded the highest number of murders. That is 1,672. A bittersweet year for a nation, but we have to move forward. Therefore, a decade from now is latter 2029, and by then, the vision for a nation should be a reality. So now, with the short time we have, I charge the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica 2019 group to endorse a movement at this very moment, one that will hold the youth of a nation accountable for strides towards achieving our Vision 2030. And here is the proposition from the right side. The theme for Youth Month 2019 has captivated the minds of many. And we have been working under the theme LIT. However, I propose we endorse the LIT UJA movement and let it be a movement for not only 2019, but one that continues to 2030 and even beyond. I therefore charge other youth and community-based groups, including and not limited to the Integrity Action Movement, the Jamaica Millennium Vision of Youth, the Youth Advisory Council, to continue to support this budding movement. We now charge our ministers to listen keenly to the submissions by the youth parliamentarians and seriously consider taking action to control the plagues that are bombarding our nation. Mr. Speaker, in closing, as the opposition, we join hands with the government, with Prime Minister and his team, as we move forward together like Honda in one accord.
Settle down. Members, we are getting there, members. Settle down.
Mr. Speaker, there be no other business for this honorable house. I now move that the sitting be adjourned. Sign and die.
The question is this honorable house be adjourned, sign or die? Those in favor? Aye. Those against? Ayes have it. This honorable House now stands adjourned.
Hi, Mas Errol. How you do?
Not too bad.
This is what's so interesting in the paper today, Mas Errol.
Enough things.